Upstate New York.
I had basically 4 hours straight of meetings today.
Ooh.
That's always lovely.
It was enlightening, for sure. First one was like a committee meeting for a thing coming up, and the second one was like, this is our marketing plan all the way through the year. So it took a little while, but we got free lunch and donuts, so it wasn't a total loss. So that was my day, and then I came out of the meeting, and everything was going to heck in the outside world. So, yeah. But we're not going to talk about politics today, or at all, because it's not this kind of podcast. So how was you guys' day? How was the drive back to the seminary?
We are doing this remotely.
Oh. Yeah, we're back to being remote. I am back at the seminary. The drive was good. Pretty uneventful for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
There was a stretch between Rochester and La Crosse that was extremely foggy. Like I maybe had 50 feet of visibility.
That's never
going
fun.
down the interstate at night. So that was very spooky.
Bad news bears.
Thankfully, the lovely application Google Maps exists. So I could see all of the twists and turns in the road before they came.
Yeah.
So I managed to make good time pretty much solely because of that.
Very cool.
Honestly, without that, I probably would have just pulled over and tried to wait it out.
Yeah. It's weird when it's foggy and also windy. It's like, shouldn't this be blowing the fog away? But no. I've had that happen a couple times. It's weird.
My day's been uneventful. It's kind of the calm before the storm in terms of school. Doing
Just
some
a deep breath before the plunge.
Right. So doing some, stuff with getting set up and getting ready while also not having a lot else to do. So I watched a lot of Clone Wars. I'm getting toward the end of season 6.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time when I finish that, James and I want to do season 7.
Yeah, I've been waiting for him to catch up so we can watch season 7.
It's good stuff. Like seasons 4 and 5 were really good, and 6 is looking really good, and so hopefully 7 keeps the momentum up because it's really good stuff. I like it.
My nephew's review of it is pretty good. I have surprisingly deep conversations with him about Star Wars. So, it's the oldest one.
I haven't talked to Jacoby since watching the Clone Wars, so I'm going to have to catch up with him about that next time I'm in the same room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At one point he was into Pokemon, but wasn't very profitable, so he switched gears to something else.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little entrepreneur. He's constantly trying to do little businesses and make money off of his friends, and keeps getting in trouble with the teachers. And he's like, man, if they just don't let me have any fun, it's like probably because you shouldn't be doing that. But I think his latest gig was making comic books and selling those to his friends for class good behavior bucks. And so when they found out about that, it was that was the end of that.
Boy points.
Yep. He's at that age where, like, if a teacher shuts him down for something, it's like, how is this possible? I need to stand up for my rights. It's like, you're in 4th grade. Chill out. It's really funny, though.
That's funny. We also finished the campaign in Age of Calamity, the Zelda Hyrule Warriors game.
Yeah.
That was fun stuff.
It apparently is an alternate timeline version of
it derailed
events.
from what actually happened in the past events of Breath of the Wild, about the time everyone was going to die.
But I still really enjoyed the story. It's like, I have
fun.
thought about what would have happened if that didn't happen.
It was a fun what-if scenario.
Yeah. And they basically say, like, when such and such a thing happened, a new world was born, so implying that this was, like, if you want to go quote-unquote canon with it, it's an alternate reality.
But then again, alternate timelines, Zelda isn't new to that,
No.
so it's pretty easily accepted. So yeah, that was fun.
Entertaining game. It was the Switch.
It chugged a bit sometimes.
Yeah, it's
just
not
because of all the
quite
enemies and effects on screen.
a little beyond what the machine is capable of handling.
But it was never like
Evidently.
game breaking. If anything, it was more just funny. It's like, oh, look at all the chaos on screen.
It's like we are causing. There's so much going on right now.
So much that.
And what can men do against such
I
a
feel like
reckless
you could
frame rate?
reckless. I feel like you could just really crank down the textures on those guys in split screen, because you don't look at them long enough to notice like low texture on them. Like,
Well, I
you
mean-
can just go really, really light on the detail because you're just mowing down hordes of them. You're not looking at them for any more than like half a second.
I suppose. I mean, color is really the only thing you go off of because that's how they kind of denote the different like strengths of enemies or whatever. But that's the thing too. Like Breath of the, I mean, I suppose the particle effects are probably something that makes the
There's
game
a bunch
work.
of explosions and
Yeah.
arrows flying all over the
Yeah,
place.
that's probably the main thing. And because like Breath of the Wild's art style isn't terribly like high quality texture or like super high poly either.
Particularly on the characters. It's very simple, very cel shaded, very borrowed from Wind Waker actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, but other than the occasional slowdown, really fun game.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. If you don't mind the frame rate slowing down, I can recommend it. It's fun. It's
Not
impressive, even though it's a completely different kind of game, how many elements they were able to carry over from Breath of the Wild
They did
that
a
I
good
really
job with that.
really enjoyed.
Not quite a deep enough experience to do an episode and analyzing it or anything, but
Yeah.
fun time.
It's-
Particularly with the buddy doing voices and just being silly with the characters.
Yep.
I would, you can play as Mifa, the fish girlfriend, right? And so when he was Link and I was Mifa, I would
Like
harass
chasing me
him.
around the map. And just
It
be,
was
hey, what's going on?
stuff like that. Just messing with people. It's fun. It's fun to play a game with James where he's not super salty at me afterwards.
It's because we're both fighting the same enemies. That's where the
Although, even when we do something like Minecraft where we're technically fighting the same enemies,
I'm just waiting until we
I'm just-
play
Way Out?
play a way out. That's gonna be fun.
that will be.
You guys are really gonna like A Way Out, I promise.
I need to get the Xbox controllers for that so we can do that. I still have John's
some
here.
fun
He
with
hasn't
that.
come and got it yet, but
Meaning we need one more
yeah. But
or two more so we can just...
two more.
Marvel.
Let's not get two mores.
That would not be good, would it?
No, it'd be bad news.
No, certainly not.
I certainly...
Speaking of two, though, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
I was about to ask, where does two come into the equation? But I'm like, oh yeah, that's our listeners.
That's you, all of you wonderful people listening to us
all two of you out
in the
there.
glorious perfect year of 2021.
Yes,
where
where nothing will possibly go wrong.
Nothing whatsoever. It is glorious and beautiful and not 2020, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff
yeah,
that happened
yeah.
last year that maybe we should have seen coming, but you know,
This is-
hindsight.
This is the time of year where it's like, okay,
Riley's
so when you
cracking
say
up.
He
last
just
year,
glossed right over it.
when you say last year, what do people mean? Because sometimes people will be saying, yeah, last year is like, okay, 2020 or 2021. Like, I get like, if it
this
was like
year's
a month ago,
2021.
then it's like, like a month ago. But like, once like February, March rolls around, it's long enough to start saying last year for things, I think. But anyway, I digress. Something that didn't come out last year, but 2 years ago,
I thought it was.
doesn't feel like that long ago because we saw this.
It was 2018 at some point. I know that
Mhm.
much.
I think it wasn't it
Spring
like
2018.
yeah. I
Anyway.
remember we went to Chick-fil-A, which had just opened in our town
Had it just opened? I thought it had been open.
relatively
would-
recently. I think it was that year,
Relatively recently, yeah.
and then we went and watched this movie.
This movie that we're talking about
Yes, the movie
is
we are totally going
Spider-Man
to
into the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
How many more times could they have put Spider into the title? I'm not sure.
Spider-Man into the
Spi-
Spider-Verse about spiders. There's spiders in it, I promise. Also spiders.
Yes.
You
We
know-
have previously talked about Spider-Man movies in the show.
Yeah.
The Sam Raimi trilogy starring Tobey Maguire.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a much more recent animated film,
Mm-hmm.
which follows a slightly different story.
Yep.
So
tell
let's take
us.
this from the top.
Yeah.
It starts out, you've got Spider-Man, and this is like the ideal version of Spider-Man. He's just classic Spider-Man,
Chris
swinging around,
Pinerman.
saving the city, doing stuff. He's Spider-Man, you know?
Chris Pinerman.
Yeah. Piner Man. He hangs out with Batman.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're in a world where Spider-Man's established. He's been doing his hero thing for a while, and everybody loves him.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't a movie about that Spider-Man.
No.
This is a movie about a kid named Miles Morales, a kid from from what,
I
Brooklyn?
forget where he's from.
Like,
but
like
yeah.
no, Queens. Like,
Queens, yeah. He's half African American, half Puerto Rican, and his dad's a cop.
Yep.
And his uncle's sort of a interesting,
interesting character.
yeah. who kinda
But
does
we
his
don't
own
meet
thing.
them yet. We just see
No.
Miles on his way to his new school that he just transferred to because he has he's like a really smart kid. He got into a really elite school because it had like high test scores, and it's like, well, let's give this kid a good education.
Yep.
And his parents, being from the lower class, lower
Lower
you
middle
know,
class kind of family.
they're like, yes, give this kid an opportunity. And so his dad's driving him to his new school, which is awkward because he's actually in the backseat of a cop car.
Getting dropped off at school by his dad, even though
It's
he's a high
a
schooler.
little awkward, and there's this whole exchange where he's like, over the PA, Miles, you forgot to say I love you, and all the kids are picking on him afterwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, Miles is at a new school, really kind of new and stressful, whole lot of stuff.
Doesn't really want to be there because he liked his old school. He was more
And he
familiar
had
and
friends
comfortable
there,
with.
and he's very much a fish out of water here. He's not terribly comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
in the
very
middle of
capable.
all this, he reaches out to his uncle Aaron Davis, who is his father's brother, and he's kind of shady, but also a real nice guy to Miles. Miles kind of wants to be like him. He's kind of a free spirit, kind of. Let's go to the subway and throw up some graffiti because it's fun. And Miles is a good artist, but that's a little bit illegal.
And his
so
uncle
dad
Aaron,
disapproves.
even though he's sort of a rough around the edges character, genuinely cares about Miles and genuinely wants to try to be like a good role model for him, even though he's
But we'll also learn about what kind of rough and what kind of edges there are.
One might say, ow, the edges a little.
Foreshadowing.
But while they're in the subway painting, just spray painting, Miles gets bit by a spider, which
Subsequently dies.
subsequently dies because he whacks it. But it's like, oh, this is a Spider-Man origin, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he's down there doing his thing, gets bit by a spider, then goes home. Next day, weird things start happening.
Mm-hmm.
He starts
Things are
sticky
sticking to his hands.
that mess up a girl's hair.
Yeah.
There's climbs out a window and
He's gotten taller all of a sudden.
a little more buff, a little more breaking things, and just kind of awkward, stumbling around. So to find answers, later that night he goes back to where him and his uncle were spray painting and tries to find what was going on. Sees the spider there. He actually makes the connection because it's like, oh, I'm climbing walls. I'm like Spider-Man because Spider-Man is a thing that already exists. He's like, oh, I'm a lot like Spider-Man. So anyway, in the subway,
Lo and behold.
yeah, speak of the devil, he finds Spider-Man. Spider-Man's down in like some abandoned part of the subway fighting the Green Goblin and the Prowler and just a couple other, like, with some bad guys.
And Fisk.
Yes, the Kingpin
Yep.
shows up and he's kind of behind the whole thing. But Spider-Man and Miles kind of run into each other and have a moment. It's like, oh, you're a Spider-Man, aren't you?
Their
Because
spider
sense
senses go
things.
off, yeah.
My spider sense is tingling. You must be a Spider-Man. So he's like, later I'll show you what it's like to be Spider-Man because I know it's rough. I've been through it, believe me. So I'm gonna be a role model for you, but later after I kick this guy's butt.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't kick the guy's butt. In fact, he gets his butt kicked.
And
fact-
is in fact killed.
Spider-Man straight up dies. And it's super sad. The big sad.
Mm-hmm.
And
he-
everyone's sad.
Before he dies, he gives Miles this USB thumb drive thing with like a kill code to like this big device that Fisk is trying to build.
In fact, that's what they were fighting about in the subway.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this giant. Turns out it's an interdimensional portal device that Spider-Man's like, if you keep doing this, you're gonna like blow up the city because that's not stable. Don't do that, maybe. And Fisk is like, no.
Get out of my way,
Yeah.
Spider Boy. I'm gonna crush you, and you're gonna die.
Yeah, and he died. So everyone's sad, and you've got Miles kind of just standing by Peter Parker's grave, just like sad and like, well, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
When suddenly, who should show up but Peter Parker? But not the same Peter Parker that died. Peter Parker from an alternate timeline.
This one's a little washed up, a little overweight,
Yeah.
and a little depressed, and a little unconscious.
Yeah. This Spider-Man is a little worse for wear because in his timeline he's not as like perfect as this Spider-Man. He's a little bit of a loser. He made some bad decisions. He divorced Mary Jane. He's just kind of washed up and just not in the best shape.
Mm-hmm.
And so after meeting up with him and dragging him around the city in a funny chase scene, we learn this. We talk to them and it's like, oh, you've got a thumb drive that'll blow up the machine. Cool. I'm gonna get home. You can blow up the machine. We'll be all done because I don't like this.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, you got to teach me how to be Spider-Man because now I have to take up the mantle because the regular Spider-Man is dead.
Right, but this Spider-Man's like, well, I don't even know what Spider-Man is anymore. It's like I'm not Spider-Man anymore. So how you gonna learn from me? I'm a total loser. So they go and infiltrate like the
Oscorp.
Was it Oscorp? I thought it was just like
No.
some company Wilson Fisk owned.
Some company that turns out Dr. Octopus, who is a woman in this universe, is running. Oh, it's Fisk's corporation, whatever it is.
Anyway, so
where
they
they're
sneak
doing
in there.
research and they're like, we got to figure out what these people are up to, so let's break into the building and
No, they broke the thumb drive earlier.
Oh, yep.
And so they got to go get a new one for a new kill switch.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
It's been
So,
a hot
yeah.
minute.
On the way into breaking into the company, there's some bonding moments, some like, this is how you Spider-Man, and then they fight Doc Ock. They fight.
She captures regulars, or she catches washed up Peter Parker, and is like, "Oh, you're doing weird stuff," because he's kind of glitching because his molecules want to be in his home universe, and because he's not, the longer he's away from his own universe, the more it's going to mess him up, and he'll like disintegrate.
Mhm.
And she's like, "Well, I can't wait to watch that happen." She reveals herself to be Dr. Octopus, and she's like, "You're staying here, bud." And Miles, even though he's a Spider-Man, he has some unique abilities unto himself.
Right, he can
turn invisible.
He's got like this electric shocky thing he can do
Mhm.
that is pretty unique to him, and
He doesn't quite know how to control either ability yet, but
he's not sure how to control any of his abilities.
but
So-
because he's invisible, he helps other Peter Parker escape, and they run off with a computer with all the files on it that they need, and they're getting chased down.
When they run into Spider-Gwen, who is Spider-Man from another universe.
Who's Gwen Stacy and not Peter
Right.
Parker.
Gwen Stacy being from the comics Peter Parker's first girlfriend who dies because Green Goblin. And she was also in the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy, and it wasn't a trilogy. It was only 2 movies, and good thing. But yeah, so it's you got, and Gwen is the person that Miles got his sticky hands caught in her hair earlier, so there was a bit
She
of
was
an
hiding
introduction
out
there.
at the school, trying to figure out what's going on, blending in.
So anyway, they meet up with her, and she helps them fight Doc Ock, and they head back to New York with the new thumb drive in hand. And they're like, well, from here, where do we go to find answers?
Aunt May's house.
Yes. So they show up at Aunt May's, and it's kind of an emotional scene because
Peter Parker has died, and in the washed up Peter Parker's universe, Aunt May has died, and so it's like sort of a sad reunion, sort of, for both of them.
Yeah. But it's also a Spider-Man reunion of sorts, because in the secret spider lair that this universe's Spider-Man has, apparently, we find out that
which happens to be in Aunt May's backyard in a shed.
Yes, like you do. We meet 3 other alternate Spider-Mans. One of them is
Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, and then was it Penny?
Penny
and the
Parker,
robot?
Spider, SP//DER,
Yeah.
who's just anime mech Spider-Man, but also a schoolgirl, because that makes sense.
Yep.
Because it's fun. And the fun thing about it is they're like all in wildly different art styles.
Yep.
Like this is an animated film, right?
Spider-Man
So
Noir is in black and white while everybody else is in color. Spider-Ham looks kind of like Porky Pig from Looney Tunes, and then Penny Parker looks, she's got the anime art style.
She's like May from Overwatch, if you're familiar.
Yeah. Now I really am Tracer.
It's just a pink robot with a small girl.
I thought
in
that's Diva.
It's
May's
Diva.
the ice
You're
one.
right.
I have no idea.
That's Diva.
But
You're right.
Spider-Man Noir is played by Nicolas Cage, and then Spider-Ham is John Mulaney, and I don't know who voices Penny Parker, but they do fit quite well in their roles in this movie. It's pretty entertaining.
So yeah, they all meet up and they're all like, "Okay, hello, we are the Spider people, and we also want to go home to our universes. So let's all go to the Kingpin Super Collider Dimension thing." And try and get home and then destroy it, right?
Yep. And let's help Miles figure out. Well, I don't think we can take him with because he's sort of a noob and a bit of a liability for us.
Yeah, he hasn't really figured out his
Abilities.
powers or abilities or anything. So they're like, "Yeah, you're a Spider-Man, but you're not there yet, you know." So they forcibly leave him behind to go on their mission because in Aunt May's house the Sinister Six like crash into their house and like,
Scorpion,
hey, let's kill some Spider-Men. So you got like
the Prowler,
Scorpion, you've got Prowler, you've got Dr. Octopus,
Green
and you've
Goblin
got, I
again.
believe, Tombstone, who's the
Tombstone.
big pale guy with the flat top cut, which is like of all the characters to include, that's fun. Just throw Tombstone in there, why not? During this fight, actually, Miles is fighting with the Prowler, and it turns out that the Prowler takes off his mask. He's like, "Oh, that's Miles." And Miles is like, "Oh, you're Uncle Aaron. This isn't cool. How about maybe don't kill me?" And he's like, "How about maybe I won't?" But then he gets shot by the Kingpin. So
for not killing the Spider-Man.
right. So Miles takes him away, and he dies in his arms, and it's a sad moment. And then, because the cops are called, Miles' dad shows up, and it's like, "Oh, my brother is also dead in an alley, and there's Spider-Man." I don't
Miles
like
is wearing
Spider-Man.
like a
he was
Halloween Spider-Man costume as his Spider-Man costume.
right. Now, Miles' dad was kind of against Spider-Man to begin with because he's like, well,
He's
who's
going
this-
outside the law. What's with that?
right. I'm down here doing my job day to day, and that guy throws a
He's
couple.
very strict by the book.
All Spider-Man is a bunch more paperwork he has to do, you know. So this like legitimizes his dislike of the new Spider-Man because like, oh, I have a dead brother now, but it's also his son, so irony.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of like the reason they leave Miles behind because his lack of figuring out his powers cost them that fight for the most part. And so he's tied up in his apartment, and all the Spider-Mens are going to like Wilson Fisk's tower to find the Super Collider. And Miles is just kind of chilling in his room, tied up, sad. His dad shows up and knocks on the door. He's like, "Hey, I've had a crazy day. I want to talk to you about how much I love you and stuff. You're trying to figure out stuff." And like, he gives this, inspiring little pep talk to Miles. And that kind of inspires Miles, and he reaches deep within himself to figure out his powers and stuff, and then zaps the webs off, goes to Aunt May to suit up, and then, swings
It's
over
his
to...
own unique Spider-Man look, which
Yeah.
is sort of him being like, I'm not going to live in the original Spider-Man's shadow. I'm going to make it my own.
Right.
And take up my own mantle as Spider-Man.
So he, like, spray paints a suit all up, and heads out to join the gang. So
and there's this whole sequence where he's like got his new suit and he's trying out his new powers and he's learning how to swing from building to building, and it's this really cool like taking a leap of faith, like they literally call it, like how will I know how will I know when I'm ready? And the spider people are like, when you don't, it's a leap of faith. And so he literally takes a jump off a building and learns how to swing and use his powers, and it's a cool sequence.
Really, really cool character sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he rejoins the Spider-Man group in the Super Collider room, fighting the bad guys.
Which, well, isn't like Fisk like unveiling this whole dastardly plan in a gala dinner?
He's not unveiling his dastardly plan. He's covering it up.
Oh yeah, but it's in a Spider-Man memoriam gala where everybody is wearing Spider-Man masks. So they're like, hey, we'll just blend in.
It's like, it can't be that easy, can it?
Okay, it is that easy.
And there's like a really humorous but also touching scene where Peter Parker runs
into MJ.
Yeah, runs into Mary Jane, and he's like, well, in his universe they divorced and she just lost her Spider-Man, and so he's like breaking up, trying to apologize to her and trying to like.
And she doesn't know who he is.
Yeah, he's just falling apart, and she's like, "Can we get more breadsticks at table 4?" It's like, I should have been there for you. When you needed breadsticks, I should have been there for you. I should have given you what you needed.
The reason why he and Mary Jane split up is because she wanted kids, and he was scared and not ready for that.
Right. So anyway, that's a fun scene. But they make their way to the Super Collider, and Miles joins them, and they fight the bad guys in a really fun action sequence that gets super trippy the more unstable the Collider gets.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned the reason that Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is using this alternate reality machine is because his wife and child left him and also subsequently died.
Got in a car accident.
He's super broken up about that, and is like, well, I'm going to steal him from another dimension because I'm obsessed that way.
Mm-hmm. I gotta make it right to them.
And so, like, after he discovered there are alternate Spider-Man, he's like, oh, this can work. Let's do this.
And when this universe's Peter Parker was killed, he told Fisk, like, you're not going to be able to bring them back, which enrages Fisk, and that's when he kills Spider-Man.
Right.
And so he tries to use the same super smash on Miles in his showdown because the particle collider opened up the portals back to their universes or something, and so
yeah, all the other Spider-Mans are gone now.
Yep, they went home, and
Wilson's plans are in ruins, and he's just like, oh, I'm gonna kill you now because I'm super mad.
Yep, he uses the same super smash on Miles, but it doesn't work because Miles is a different kind of Spider-Man. So he uses super shock powers to defeat Fisk, and because the cops get called, Miles' dad shows up and is like, you can do it, Spider-Man, whoever you are. So get up and fight. And it's, really cool fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
Shuts off the collider, saves the day. Mr. Fisk gets arrested. And Miles talks to his dad with a fake deep voice as Spider-Man. It's like, okay, I'm looking forward to teaming up with you.
I love you, officer.
It's like, I love you too. It's like, I may disagree with your methods, but I'm willing to team up to help save the city or whatever.
So yeah, and that's pretty much where it ends. There's a teaser at the end where like apparently Gwen figured out how to come back, and at the post-credit scene we learned
because they kind of like each other.
Yeah. And the post-credit scene, there's like this scene with 2099 Spider-Man who goes back in time to see the 1966 cartoon Spider-Man, and it's this funny meme reference. It's
like with the Spider-Mans pointing at each other.
To the plot. It's just really fun.
It's a fun little thing.
And I think that's one thing I really like about this movie. It's just really fun.
Mm-hmm.
The animation.
It's written and directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who did movies like the Lego Movie, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and a few other projects. I think they did 21 Jump Street, of which I haven't seen. But they have like this really fun kind of avant-garde like style of writing, which sort of like, instead of like leaning into tropes, like comments on them and sort of pokes fun at them while making use of them.
Yeah, it'll use a trope as a springboard to talk about the trope.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the film is it's really entertainingly, cleverly written. The dialogue is really fun, and the characters are really what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's just a very, very fun film.
Yes, that's one thing that's I like about it. It's just fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Other cool things about this Spider-Man movie is it is very much a Spider-Man story, right? It's got the classic origin story, all the beats, even an uncle that dies, right? But the unique thing is, this is like, we've had Spider-Man movies and stories for years now. We are more than familiar with it. In fact, some people are straight up tired of it, right? But this one puts enough of a spin on it where it kind of just shakes up and diversifies things. And I'm not just saying that because Miles is black. I'm saying that because he's a slightly different kind of Spider-Man. There are several slightly different kinds of Spider-Man in this movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of his arc too. Is like he needs to become his own version of Spider-Man and play to his own strengths and not try to be something he's not.
He has a lot of the same powers, a lot of the same responsibilities, but in the end, the hero he becomes is uniquely him. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the
movie sort of like talks about how he doesn't feel like he has a lot of agency in his life because, like, you know, at the beginning of the movie, he's moved to a different school he doesn't want to be at, and then he becomes Spider-Man. And he's like, I don't want to be Spider-Man, and then Chris Spider-Man tells him, like, I don't think you have much of a choice there, kiddo. And so in sort of the climax, well, not the climax, but like sort of the moment of truth for Miles is when he fully embraces like the Spider-Man mantle while, you know, bringing to it what is uniquely his. He sort of manages to find that balance where, yeah, he's fully embracing and choosing this aspect of himself.
Because the whole movie, he is wearing this cheap knockoff like costume store Spider-Man suit that Stan Lee sold to him.
Yep. And he's trying to learn from washed up Peter Parker.
But like symbolically, when he graduates to his own costume, it's inherited from the regular Peter Parker, but he puts his own spin on it, right? It's not some cheap imitation of Spider-Man. It is authentically Spider-Man and authentically him. It's just really kind of neat symbolism there.
Yep.
And it's also a symbolism expressed by the various different characters, right? You've got this really diverse cast of spider people that are just like all wildly different, from anime mech to noir to the Spider Gwen
to cartoon pig.
Cartoon pig, right?
The another thing too, like in terms of like Miles' struggle with like his individuality and stuff, is like that conflict is sort of played out in his relationship between his uncle Aaron and his who's kind of a free spirit, and his dad, who's very much by the rules. And so it's implied that over
between those two,
over time, like the two didn't see eye to eye, so they kind of split up. But Aaron has Miles has a close relationship with both of them. And
he kind of inherits the best of both worlds. Like, he takes his father's kind of devotion to justice and, you know, right, and make sure he does the right thing, but he also has this sort of like you say, free spirit,
creativity and individuality.
Yeah creativity, artistry in the way that he does things.
And at the end of the movie, and like another thing too is like over time, like Miles sort of works on his relationship with his dad because he was rebelling a little bit. And at the end of the movie, his dad also lightens up a little bit, and they spray paint a mural to memorialize his uncle Aaron, because his uncle Aaron was saying like, yeah, your dad and I, when we were your age, would also get into mischief with me and that sort of thing. But then he decided he was all about this living for the law kind of stuff, and we kind of split apart that way. But Aaron sort of knows the man that he is, and doesn't want Miles to go down the wrong path either. So he's like, yeah, you should listen to your dad. But it's kind of interesting, those two relationships. And then his mom is just, you know, very loving, and like
she's there and supportive of him, but like not as big of a character in the film.
Yeah.
We also get a bit of a really good arc with Peter B. Parker, the washed up Spider-Man, because he has kind of fallen into complacency with the current state of his life. He's no longer at the top of his game. His life's kind of a mess. He's kind of sad, but it's just kind of the way it is, and he just has been living like that for years now. But then he comes to this dimension, right, and sees the legacy of this Spider-Man. And
Well, he's kind of in denial about how he's let his life go as well. He's unwilling to cope with it.
But he sees himself in Miles, and he's reminded of what being Spider-Man means, the courage and the responsibility. In fact, there's a part of the movie when they first meet, and Miles is like, but doesn't great power come with great? And he's like, don't finish the line. Don't say it. I've heard it way too much.
I'm sick of it.
So that's kind of where he is. He has kind of shrugged off the responsibility just because he's tired of it. Right? It's worn on him. But over the course of the film, he teaches Miles and saves the day, and is at the end of the film willing to make the sacrifice, be the one to stay behind and blow up the collider while all the other spider people go.
But then Miles doesn't let him. He's like, you got to let me do this. You got to go fight your battle, which is going back to Mary Jane and like getting back together with her and accepting like, you know, the responsibility of becoming a dad, because this is what he was running away from because he was scared.
And he even had kind of some parenting experience with Miles here. So it's like, I kind of like Peter B's arc in this film of like, maybe being Spider-Man actually does mean something bigger than me.
It's funny with like each introduction of different versions of Spider-Man, they all have like this like, let's start from the top, and they give like a quick overview of like who they are and
Like
why they're
flip through some comic book
the
pages.
one and only Spider-Man.
Right.
And every one of them has like, it starts off with like this universe's Spider-Man, and then as each new one is introduced, when Peter B. Parker's is introduced, like he's giving like this like really, he's like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good kind of vibe to it, but then you just see how miserable he is, and like the actual
he says
shots.
that, but like the narration that is over a video of him like
eating
pizza and crying in the shower.
Yep.
And like everybody does this, and it's like it starts out. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, except for Spider Ham, who was a spider that was bitten by a radioactive pig. It's funny because of course.
Yeah, and Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Wire, who's just like edgy and over the top. Very well cast.
I lit a match and put my fingers over it just to feel something. Anything.
It's kind of unfortunate that the other three Spider-Man don't get as much of a spotlight, but for as much as they're in the movie, they are really fun.
Yeah.
Just fun characters.
And then there's Gwen. There's Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, she's like the third main character. And she doesn't have as much of an arc as the other two. She's kind of just the most confident as a spider person. But also, she's hesitant to include other people in her life just because of she's had a bad experience. In her dimension, her best friend, Peter Parker, went crazy and turned into the Lizard, and they fought, and he died. So roles were reversed because in the original comics, Gwen Stacy died fighting when Spider-Man fought Green Goblin, and in her dimension, well, it's the Peter Parker that died because it's a fun what-if scenario. And so over the course of the movie, she slowly learns to be a team player and grows in a really nice, grows in friendship with Miles. It's like, can we be friends at the end? And it's like, because he's early in the film, she said something like, "I don't do friends anymore." And then at the end of the movie, Miles is like, "So you start doing that friends thing?" And she's like, "I'll think about it." Jumps into the portal or whatever.
And there's the thing like too, like where his Uncle Aaron was just like, he's like, I should try to talk to girls or something like that. It's like, well, what do I even do? It's like, see, what you do is you're really smooth. You just put your hand on his shoulder and be like, hey. And then Miles gives it a shot.
But that's when his hand sticks in her hair.
He's just like, just does a really awkward, like slaps his hand on her and he's like, hey. She's like, hi.
He even brings that around at the end when he shoulder touches Kingpin. He's like, hey, and then shots him.
So all around, good movie.
Really fun movie, really fun characters. And just a think the story is unique among Spider-Man movies, where it's like Spider-Man is written as a superhero that you're supposed to identify with, right? Where it's like everyone goes through this growing up experience where they suddenly have greater power and greater responsibility in their life. And in this movie, we don't just have Peter Parker as an example. We have several different people living that reality expressed in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, this movie is like everybody can be Spider-Man. Everybody is Spider-Man in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's kind of and it's exemplified by having a different non-Peter Parker main character and having all the supporting cast that is all these crazy different Spider-Men.
But they are all alike in that they all have great power and great responsibility, and they have the mantle of Spider-Man to uphold.
Right.
So they are different and yet the same in a lot of ways. They're unique, but similar. I suppose we can get into...
anything else before we get into the Transcendentals? Or?
I just wanted to expound a little bit on that point that James mentioned early in our discussion. Lord and Miller, the directors of the movie, have this like trend that one commentator has referred to as meta-modernism.
Mm-hmm.
It's postmodernism, and that's hard to say, so they just coined it meta-modernism. But the whole like postmodern ethos is like everything is pain, nothing matters. I am numb. Nothing, life is pointless. And
you have to pick apart the old norms and the old ways of doing things and try to expose them as frauds.
Which is the point of like a lot of other comic books, like Watchmen is very much postmodern in the picking apart of superheroes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's very subversive. It tries to destroy the pre-existent order that it perceives. Whereas what Lord and Miller have done, they see into that and they see that it's not really a satisfying solution to the problem that people see. I mean, there's a legitimate problem that postmodernism has noticed, but they try to solve it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So what Lord and Miller do with a lot of their movies is they sort of lean into those postmodern tropes and use them to sort of find meaning in the meaninglessness, which is a very interesting thing.
It's like you can't not have meaning. You have to find meaning somehow just to be a functional person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really...
There's a great video on YouTube that we should include in the description.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I ran across it not long after seeing the movie, and it was a very good analysis, so can recommend. We'll put that in the show notes.
And this is very much a movie that takes apart and dissects and questions what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the movie, instead of the conclusion being, well, it doesn't matter, Spider-Man isn't really a hero, XYZ, the conclusion it comes to is there may be a lot of problems with that he causes, right? But at the end of the day, being a hero, this heroism is something to achieve. Something it is a good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It acknowledges that there is a good in truth, as opposed to questioning what is the good and what is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
with that being a rhetorical question, implying that there isn't.
Right.
Sometimes. I suppose.
Speaking of which,
yeah, truth. What sort of truths can we divulge from this movie? Or that's not the right word, but what can we draw from it?
With great power, there must also come great responsibilities.
Yeah,
which is the truth you get from Spider-Man and his story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not all the same powers. It's not always the same responsibilities.
It applies differently to different people, but the mantra is the same.
Two people may be called to the same overall vocation, but that doesn't mean they'll be doing the same thing or that they're the same people, right? You are drawn to express yourself and be wholly yourself in what you do, But that doesn't mean you don't also have a destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't also have a thing you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can be the hero, but you can also be your own kind of hero.
Right. There's your vocation, what you're called to do with your life is something that only you can do.
It is
Like, even if
tailored
there are
to-
other people who do something similar to you, your specific thing you were created for, that is something that is a void that can only be filled by your living your life.
Mhm.
So what else can we bring out of it?
Family can definitely be messy sometimes,
Mhm.
but notwithstanding that, you have the ability to work on it and reforge it if you put the effort in.
Yeah.
In fact, family is a very big thing with this story, like the relationships between family.
Mhm.
You've got Miles and his dad and his uncle Aaron. You've got Wilson Fisk obsessively trying to recapture his family
Mhm.
that he had that was perfect
By
for him.
force.
Right. Then you've got Spider-Man, the loser, who has, problems with his Mary Jane. So he's, and not that kind of Mary Jane. No, who's had a falling out with his wife, and so
Yeah.
family is a very prominent.
Well, and it's sort of like
thread in this
people, relationship with their families was damaged by their poor choices, right? Because with Wilson Fisk, his whole deal is like he sort of started pursuing like these really shady business deals and stuff, and became
Mhm.
a villain to the point where his wife didn't recognize him anymore, and so like took and saw like he was gradually becoming more and more violent, and she's like, I'm gonna get out of here with our son. And then as they were leaving him, they got into a car accident, and so instead of owning up to his mistakes and realizing that his actions are what caused the death, or led to the deaths of his loved ones, he instead tries to go to another universe and regain his family by force.
which parallels Peter B. Parker, who's in denial of his wrongdoing and
Mm-hmm.
trying to.
The fact that he was being selfish with Mary Jane, and that's why they split up.
Mm-hmm. And that's also a similar choice that is offered to Miles, right? Where he could choose one part of his family over the other
Mm-hmm.
and kind of distance himself from.
Be reckless and mess around and sort of squander his opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of drama and problems that can come from within families, but it's important to cultivate that respect, that love, that families are important.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And that's kind of the thing too, where like the other Spider people are too impatient to allow Miles to develop into his own Spider-Man because they're running short on time,
And they
so
also
they try
have their
to
own ideas of what it means
to
to
be
look like
Spider-Man.
being a Spider-Man, right?
Yep. And so Miles is able to escape from them, like basically locking him in his room, and is able to save them. So they kind of learn the lesson that like it's Miles in his own unique incarnation of Spider-Man, that his differences that enabled him to save the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Anything else?
For the truth part of it,
Yeah.
well,
I think we've explored.
we've touched
it
on a
pretty
lot of the main themes. There's other stuff you can draw from it, obviously, and there's
Mhm.
several videos on YouTube that are really good that analyze it. But
well. Mm-hmm.
those are some of the main highlights, I would say, of truth.
Goodness. What is good about this movie?
I think one thing I like about this movie is the way all the Spider-Men interact with each other and how they learn from each other and leave that interaction being better Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where Gwen learns to, that friendships are important and she kind of needs people in her life. Peter B. learns that, he should be more responsible. Miles learns from them how to be Spider-Man and that it's okay to be a different Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they all kind of come together for a cause and grow from the experience together.
Spider-Ham's arc. He's the most developmentally whole of all of that. I don't know, he just kind of does his thing.
And so does Spider-Man Noir, and
Mm-hmm.
they and the Penny Parker. She's just they're all just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
They're all just kind of there for the most of the story, but they're fun.
Yeah.
And there's some slight growth they do, but
in general, like all of their commitment to upholding justice and goodness in fighting evil, even to the point where Peter Parker in this universe sacrifices his life to save the city.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn that he was just an all-around great person in his personal life as well, did a lot for like charity, and was a brilliant scientist and did a lot to try to bring good into the world.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where like there's like the whole city like really feels his loss, like the vacuum that's left behind, and sort of leaves Miles kind of intimidated about how to take up this mantle and like fill that void himself at the beginning of the movie. And like he goes to Peter Parker's grave and he's like, I'm not sure how, like, I'm like you, but I don't know how to like become more like you. Like, as a great person that you are, I'm not sure if I'm up for this. So
there's also the support that he gets from his dad, even though there's a bit of a block in communication there. At the end of the movie, he has that pep talk for his son where it's like, we may have our differences, but you can always talk to me, sort of thing. Then also, Aunt May kind of also fills a parental role.
Yeah.
This is a very different kind of Aunt May,
She
too.
knows what's up.
She knows what's up.
Yeah.
She's actively involved with this universe's Spider-Man's stuff, given the fact that his secret hideout is in her backyard.
Mm-hmm.
But
And they're like, no fighting the villains in my living room. Get out of here. Like that kind of stuff. She's just very put together. Beauty.
this is a fantastically animated film.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, every frame is just oozing with style and just so fun to watch.
Broadly speaking, the movie is 3D animated, but with like cel shaded aesthetic to it. So it resembles a lot the comic book style.
I think like every other frame is
every few
painted
frames
over?
they'll do like flash frames where it's completely painted.
Yeah, or it's like completely it's like the closest thing we've come to in film to making like a moving comic book.
Mm-hmm.
It's
They even have like the little dots they had from like the printing paper,
right,
and like
the dithering shading,
and like the little squiggles for things that are moving, and like different like sort of bam and pow and
like onomatopoeias that'll pop up when things happen on screen.
yep.
So it's like really snazzy, just really fun to watch.
And one video I watched that I can also post a link to is talked about how over the course of the movie, this is really getting into the nitty gritty, but so animation, the traditional 2D animation runs on like different frame rates, right? So in the old days, it was like, I think 15 frames a second or something, or 8 frames a second or something like that. So a little more choppy. And then all the other Spider-Man are in like the standard smooth 24 frames per second. But Miles is in like a lower frame rate. And over the course of the movie, the frame rate of his character gets faster and faster until
he's up to speed with
until
everybody else.
he's literally up to speed. So it's a really crazy, cool, like
really smartly put together film.
yeah, meta way of expressing how he is becoming more like Spider-Man, and that he is like just using the raw filmmaking details like that to tell a story in a way like if nobody had told you, like you can sort of see it, but like once it's pointed out to you, it's like super cool.
But yeah, like also the music in the movie's really good. The soundtrack's good. They like there's other videos on this too, but it's like the way they tie musical themes into like what Miles is listening to on his headphones, because at the beginning of the movie he's like listening to music on his headphones and like drawing or something, and then like later in the film during like his big like leap of faith scene, they mash up the theme they wrote for Miles Morales and like a rap song that he was listening to earlier in the movie to create this really stylish expression of the character. The movie overall is just stylish. It just is really.
It uses like really great use of like color and like contrast and different things like that, and like there's artistry to every frame of the movie. And like there's a little when people are thinking about stuff, like there's a little like speech bubble,
like the little narration thought bubble blocks that Miles has.
Yep. So yeah, all around very artful movie. It's a joy to watch. It's interesting too because like for a long time we've had like, you know, cartoon 2D animation, and then even now that it's been like over like gosh, I think in a few years like Toy Story, the first 3D animated movie, is going to be like 30 years old. So yeah, that's kind of nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so we've had 3D animation for a while. And like now and again, people have tried to blend them together, but this movie does like an excellent job of like expanding on both mediums, playing to both of their strengths, and using it to create something new in a way that reflects the message and themes of the movie. So
yeah,
very, very beautifully made film.
In fact, you could say that it's very unified in that way.
Yes. All of these elements come together to reveal a whole that gives us a better picture.
Yeah. Like the visuals, like I think
the story, the characters, the visuals, the music, the everything like ties together to tell one united story instead of different elements that piece together create a story. It's like it's sort of everything sort of reiterates and re-echoes and reaffirms the story that's being told. So yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Anybody have any closing thoughts? We good?
Nope. We good.
we good.
Well, if you want more goodness, subscribe.
And occasionally truth, beauty, and unity.
Yeah. Sometimes. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So follow us on any of those as you prefer. Also, you can follow us on social media at Palapapus on Twitter and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, you can email us at the Palladium I always say at palladiumpapus@gmail.com. And yeah, we'll be back again with more shenanigans next week. We will catch y'all later. Bye now.
Bye.
See ya.